Welcome everyone, Costin here with a discussion about a Total War Saga Troy, and specifically about the resource system in the game, how to utilize it to the most optimal level, and some of the things to understand, because this resource system is going to be carried over in Pharaoh, and it is the exact same type of resource system. Though there are changes, of course, going to be in Pharaoh, and hopefully, quite crucially, there are going to be some balancing changes between the resources. I'm also going to talk about some of the pitfalls that Troy does have, and hopefully Pharaoh will not have. So let's talk about resources. And I'm just going to go over here to Argos. I started over here. Now, there are 5 resource types. You have food, you have wood, you have stone, you have bronze, you have gold. Out of these 5 resources, the one that's most important to acquire, though it's not necessarily the most important to actually use, but the one most important to acquire is gold. Gold is a limited resource. You have gold mines on the campaign map, and if there's any change that they are going to make in Pharaoh, I kind of think that the gold mine shouldn't run out quite as quickly. Because they do run out. Like this gold mine has been active since the start of the game, and it's run out for, I know, 10, 15 turns or so. But this was the main gold mine that I used. I did go to war against the Arcadians over here, which should have been my allies, but hey, you know, I needed the gold. This is one of the problems to mention about the resource system. It pushes you, dependent on the map's design. It's heavily influenced on the map design, but for a lot of legendary lords in this game, for a lot of heroes, as they're called here, you are pushed into making a bunch of asinine decisions just to get resources. But some people will say, oh, you can trade. Well, the thing is, not all resources are equal in trade. Gold is very valuable because it is the rarest resource, so factions... So the AI factions are going to want a lot of it. This is a legendary campaign, and obviously on legendary, the AI cheats, and they get a significant amount of resources. But they don't get resources in every single department. Specifically, what the AI gets is food. So if we look at some AI factions, you can see that Nestor over here has a lot of food. Troyzen, which only has 1 freaking settlement, has 30,000 in food. These guys, who only have 1 settlement, have 16,000. And I've kind of been taking a lot of their resources actually through trade and through the faction mechanic of dominance, which gives me the ability of getting a lot of resources. But if we look at various factions, we can see that there's quite a few factions that have food. But if we look at gold, very few. If we look at bronze, free in the entire game. Though it is been misleading, this tab over here, because this tab only shows what the AI considers to be a significant amount of resources. That doesn't mean they don't have those resources. So for instance, Alamus has 1,000 bronze. These fellows right here have 2.7k bronze, which is quite a substantial amount. Personally, I'm in a bit of a trouble spot over here in this campaign because I just confederated Agamemnon, and because of the administrative costs, the supply lines of this game, I'm now in a situation where I'm losing a lot of bronze every single turn because units cost bronze. There's a bronze upkeep and there's a food upkeep as well in the campaign. Maybe even a wood one, if I'm not mistaken, if I look at the Odysseus over here with some of his chariots. No, it is bronze, just bronze and food. But gold is important because it's the one resource the AI won't have in large quantities. So if you can get gold very quickly in a campaign, let me just go over to the gold, to 1 gold mine that I do have that's active. If you can get gold, and look at this one, this is generating 228 gold per turn. If you can get a lot of gold very quickly, if you can get a single gold mine, that can generate you a significant amount of money that you can then trade with other factions for the resources that you will need throughout your campaign. So getting gold, not to use it for construction or anything like that, though you will certainly use it. Gold is mainly used for temples, certain high tier units, heroes, etc. Or rather, agents. Heroes only cost food, but agents do cost gold to recruit. Not to maintain, but to recruit. A small amount, not a significant amount. But if you're interacting with the gods, you will need gold. If I open Divine Well over here, I can pray to God, and that's a bit of gold. So getting gold as a resource is not so important in terms of spending it, though some factions will have really good units for gold. More so, it's important to be able to trade, because let's say I go to a faction that has a substantial amount of food, like they have 34,000 food, and we do a barter, because this is how the economy works. Well, let's say I trade 189 gold. That's going to count for quite a significant amount. I can almost get 5,000 food just for that. And getting 5,000 food is not necessarily easy in its own right, but because of the barter system and because of the fact that the AI gets a lot of free food, then bartering with food is the worst decision you can make. Instead, what you want to do is get gold or any other resource, though gold is preferable, because if you get a gold mine, you're going to get a lot of gold. It's going to trade for a lot, like this mine right here. Sure, it's a tier 3 mine, it's gotten all the structures, etc. But this mine is generating 228. Even if it was generating 100 or 30, like at level 1, it will generate 12 by default, from the structure. And we're looking at 20 per turn. Well, 20 per turn can count for quite a bit. And obviously I can increase it tier 2, tier 3, etc. So there's a significant amount of value in gold in procuring it, but it's not the most valuable resources for you to use. The most valuable resource that you actually want in large quantities is wood. I'll get into food in just a second, but in order to achieve anything on a campaign, you need to take over settlements and build them up. Well, every settlement on the campaign map is going to require a substantial amount of wood in order to upgrade the structures. So for instance, over here, I may need 600 wood over here just to construct this Fletcher to get more from this. Or if I want to build a port, it's costing 1,500. And keep in mind, this is a bit late in a campaign. Like, we're heading towards the end game over here. I'm already invading Troy in this situation. I've got 3 armies, and another one is on the way. Like, I've got 3 full armies, and I'm sending another one on the way to merge with this one and get 4 armies. Then I've got Odysseus, and eventually I'll get to Agamemnon. But yeah, this is certainly towards the end game. But a lot of these structures do cost a significant amount of wood. So getting a lot of wood early on is important. Beyond just, getting a bunch of lumber camps, what you really need to do is get gold or other resources like bronze or stone and trade them for the wood from factions that will have flat out more than you will. I think the way the AI benefits work is that the AI has a significant food increase, but they also get multipliers on the resources they're generating. So Troyzen, for instance, has a ridiculous amount of food over here because they have a freaking farm over here. And they have a tier 3 settlement, and they have a hunter's lodge. So I think they're generating a ridiculous amount of food every single turn from this particular settlement. By the way, fun fact, Troyzen is Agamemnon's vassal, or was Agamemnon's vassal. I don't gain vassal as Diomedes over here. That's kind of screwed up. Because the way Troy worked is they limited those kind of mechanics dependent on the legendary lord you are playing. So only Agamemnon could vassalize. Screws you over when you're trying to confederate factions, or when you're trying to confederate them. But wood is the most important thing, because without it you won't build the unit production, you won't build certain units like chariots, you won't build the resource production, and all of that is important. Beyond wood, you also have stone. Stone is also very crucial, because if you're constructing a settlement building, if I do have one, you're going to need a fair amount of stone as well. You're also going to need gold for the main settlement buildings, but you shouldn't be too concerned about the main settlement buildings, because getting to tier 3 early on is crucial. Getting past tier 3 is not necessarily so important, with the exception obviously some unit recruitment, but you only need that in 1 or 2 provinces. In other provinces, there's no value. One key difference between, say, Warhammer and Troy is that in Warhammer, obviously, you want to get your main settlement buildings as high a level as possible, hero capacity, etc. That's not how it works here. The only real benefits that you're getting, yes, you can get some various benefits from structures, but the main benefits are the unit recruitment that you unlock at a higher and higher level, and certain temples that do give you advantages. But there's also certainly some disadvantages with that. But overall, like getting to tier 3 to unlock the tier 3 units, that's important to do it quickly, but beyond that, not quite as crucial. Obviously, you do want to get to tier 4, tier 5, but you know, once you get a bunch of tier 3 units, you're not going to be able to afford a lot of armies of tier 3 units, suffice to say. But you do want to get to tier 3 as quickly as possible. Just a question of balancing. By the way, you need stone. You need wood and stone. Those are the two main resources that you're going to want to utilize in a campaign. But there's more, of course. Then there's bronze. Bronze can be used for certain buildings, but honestly it's in limited quantity, so you're not looking at spending a ridiculous amount of bronze per turn. Bronze is mainly spent on units. So for instance, the Warriors of Artemis over here, they require bronze to recruit. There's other units as well that do require bronze. I do have an army here that's recruiting. So you can see that there's quite a few units over here that do require a fair amount of bronze to recruit, and some of them, or a good number of them, do require some amount of bronze to maintain. So food and bronze are used to recruit units. Bronze in particular is used to recruit higher tier units. Basic units can be recruited purely with food, but if you want higher tier stuff, you're going to need bronze, and you're also going to need bronze for certain structures. Like if I look at the building browser right here, actually, it's not going to show me that, what it's going to cost. Okay, let me see if I have any settlement that I can use. No. Well, I guess I could cancel this one. So you can see here that this particular building is requiring a bit of bronze. Not too much, but it is requiring bronze to upgrade. So the resource production does require bronze, I guess. The tools, so to speak, that you're using. So bronze is mainly used for those kind of buildings, resource production, but mainly for higher tier units. So for instance, these Argive Axemen, they require bronze to recruit, they require bronze to maintain. There are, of course, other units like that. But let's talk about food now. So priorities: getting a gold mine, very important. Getting multiple gold mines, you'll be the richest person on the map if you can get 2 gold mines early on in a campaign. One of the ways I made this campaign work, and Diomedes has a pretty miserable campaign given his starting position, but the way I made it work is I took out the Arcadians, took out the Corinthians, of course, that I started a war with, then went to war against Arcadians, took them out, suffered the reliability penalty, but it was well worth it. Took them out, took their gold mine, then took all of this territory, and then marched over here to take the second gold mine. Ignored Athens, took out the Boeotians, and then just conquered all of this territory for myself, and then marched over here to wage war on Troy. That's effectively been my campaign. Talking about food, well, because the AI gets so much food per turn. Like, you look at Nestor, he's got like, what, 5 settlements, and 2 of them I just literally traded to him this turn. He's still at 24,000 food, and there are some that have substantially more than that. Like this minor faction over here that controls what, 2 territories by looks of it, maybe a few more, but effectively a nothing faction, but has 34,000 food.
We've got plenty
and
to
this
discuss.
is the thing. Since the AI has a lot of food by default, then you can easily get a really good deal, because when it's in red, when the resources are in red, it represents that they have a surplus. Since they have a surplus, since they have so much food, they're willing to trade it in a significant for a significant value of food for the gold I currently have. Or one of the things you can do that is smarter, you can go to a faction like this, and let's say that I would give them 100 gold a turn. I am generating more than 100 gold a turn, and I can generate and I can get 2,650 food. So all the units, all the armies at basically maximum supply lines, I might be able to maintain them at this point. The bronze situation is going to be a bigger problem by just trading away some of the gold that I'm making for food from a minor insignificant faction. Is a balancing issue, and I think that the way they handled it with the cast dwarves was much better, because the cast dwarves, while obviously they need gold for their units and they can gain a lot of it, like I feel like with the exception of like materials perhaps being too necessary for them to do anything, like the balancing, the way they handled the balancing for the cast dwarves was much better, as opposed to just looking at resource tab like this. And this is not even the craziest part, because the absolutely insane factions that have 60,000, 70,000 food, they've already been eliminated. Odysseus, for whatever reason, is sitting on a mountain of food in his territory over here in Ithaca. In Troy, well, I call him Daddy Priam if I'm playing a Trojan campaign, because he's like sitting on a mountain of 80,000, maybe even 100,000 food, and you can trade wood, stone, bronze, gold for that food. You do care about obviously producing your own food, but you also care about maintaining a lot of armies and getting a lot of, wood and gold and bronze. So generally speaking, you prioritize those other resources and you trade them away for food. Never prioritize food. It's a loser's game, because the AI is always going to generate far more food than you will. Like looking at this particular situation, yes, I am generating 50,000 food per turn at turn 72 with a massive freaking empire. There are AI factions that can generate a lot more than that in a quicker fashion in a campaign just because of the cheats. So trying to play that game against AI is not a wise decision. That's what you need to know about the Troy economy. Now, what could they change in Pharaoh? From my perspective, what should they change? Well, one, the way they design each and every campaign, because one of the significant problems that exists in Troy is that the campaigns are designed like crap. Like, if you're starting as Ajax, just as an example, you start over here in Salamis, you have an army to defeat, you can't even auto-resolve because it will lose you a lot of units, then you have to take Aegina, then you have to do island hopping, but oh wait, you're gonna end up in a war with Athens very quickly. And Athens is a pretty powerful faction that's not playable, but they start with 4 settlements. They are going to have a pretty powerful army that's more powerful than anything you can recruit or maintain early on in a campaign. So you're screwed if you're playing as Ajax. Agamemnon, ooh, great. Look at Agamemnon. He has to take over. He has to take over a provincial capital as his quote-unquote initial battle. That is a pretty miserable situation to have to deal with. And even worse, he has the Corinthians to the north that are part of his province. Not a great affair to have to tackle. Odysseus is in a better situation, but Odysseus has a lot of problems because, well, he has several issues. If you confederate with other factions as Odysseus, you're not really going to gain a lot from that. Well, I guess you could, because they'd just be converted into those special settlements. Because Odysseus is all about naval supremacy, so he doesn't have inland territories normally. He does have, like, quote-unquote outposts, but he doesn't have regular territories inland, so there's a severe limitation on his campaign. Menelaus surprisingly works a lot better, because he has a clear campaign path over here, invading Crete, and then going over for Sarpedon, invading from the south over here in Anatolia. But you get the gist of it. Like, the campaigns, the way they're designed, they're not great, especially when it comes to resources, because sometimes you might play a campaign that has an abundance of resources, and then you play campaigns where you have to declare war on quote-unquote your natural allies, like the Arcadians, Argos, in order to seize their gold mine. Or if you're playing Hector, you're declaring war on a faction of the same culture as you because you want to take over a settlement over here. Because there's a gold mine here, but the province it's part of, one of the settlements, is controlled by the faction over here. So there's one issue, a fairly substantial issue. Or you could play Aeneas, who has literally got everything he wants. He doesn't have as much food. Like, if you want to see a campaign that just proves the point, the most powerful legendary lord in the game by far is actually Aeneas. Not because he's the strongest fighter, not because he has the best faction effects. No, simply because Aeneas starts over here in Dardania. Looking at this territory, he has stone in his initial territory. He has wood, and he can get 1 gold mine over here. Then he can come over here, take 2 gold mines over here. Hector can get this gold mine pretty quickly, but he's not going to get the second one. Or maybe he can, but you won't get it as quickly as possible. Like, literally, Aeneas, you auto-resolve your way for an entire campaign. You almost never have to fight a battle. You build massive stacks, and then you conquer all of this territory over here, and then unleash your hordes on the Chians. Balance issues. Like, I understand history or mythology, but they could have done this in a much better way than they end up doing, because it created lots of issues which ruined the enjoyment of the game. And hopefully that's something they avoid in Pharaoh, because I'm gonna say it right here: if Pharaoh is anything like this fucking map, it's gonna be a piece of shit. There's no denying that particular aspect. Like, if it has this severe imbalance between resources, like, it's one thing to not start with a gold mine, okay, or, you know, having to put some effort. It's another thing to have to fight through 4 different factions, or to fight through Corinthians, who are actually pretty powerful early on in a campaign with a better army than what poor Diomedes has, then have to declare war on your natural allies, then conquer several provincial capitals, and then march over here to get a second gold mine, as opposed to just, you know, capturing a couple of territories over here and then taking one very quickly, as Aeneas. The balance is ridiculous. And let's not even talk about the fact that Troy, that if you trade any resources with Troy, you literally, like, since Troy has so many resources, you can get a hell of a deal by trading with Troy as a Trojan faction, and they'll even give you thousands of wood and food, tens of thousands even, maybe for free. Yes, for free. That's so ridiculous. It's quite insanely ridiculous. You will be drowning in cash. That's one of the balance problems, because the Chians don't really have that kind of possibility. They're lacking in resources, they're lacking in expansion plans, and because of that, they end up being far more limited. There's a reason why in this game, for quite a very long time, the Trojans would be the one conquering Greece, not the other way around. Anyway, Costin here, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.